We are live. This is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across entertainment. My name is Cameron Richardson, and joining me as always is Sean Clark. Sean, just what a weekend we had, bud. Just what a weekend. Are you ready to talk about it?
This is the kind of weekend that myself as a rabid NFL fan lives for. To say that I lost my mind a few times this weekend is an understatement, and even though I'm incredibly sleep deprived, I could not sleep last night, I am fully awake and ready to talk about all 4 games. Let's do it.
Joining us today, Evan McNelia, Michael Manning. Now, gentlemen, we got into a little bit of an exchange last night. Well, not me. It was more so Sean, Evan, Michael, and our other guest, Brendan Martin, who's on occasion, who's on Fridays. But we will get to that later. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Good, sir.
Yep.
Very good.
Very good.
Amazing game and the best divisional round I have seen during my lifetime.
Yeah, they did not miss this weekend. It was unbelievable.
Well, let's talk about it. We're going to start with the obvious, and that is the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Arguably the greatest football game I've ever seen. I've watched a lot of NFL, so I'd have to go through all the games I've ever watched in my life and watch them all, but I don't think there was an ending quite like this one. It's what we expected, and it delivered even more so than the high expectations is already set. And it had to follow up to three pretty crazy games before with the Bengals and Titans, the 49ers and the Packers, and then whatever the Rams-Bucks game, the second half of that game was. But Sean, when you reflect on what you just watched this weekend, you know, you're our NFL historian. Just where does this sit for you? Has it sunk in yet about how insane this weekend was?
One of the reasons I couldn't sleep last night is because I needed hours to reflect on what we saw this weekend. And here's what I thought about. The 2017 divisional playoff round before this weekend was the best I ever saw. That weekend, you had a old school duel between the Atlanta Falcons and Philadelphia Eagles, where Steve Sarkisian blew the game with terrible goal line play calling. And we did have one dud, and that was Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans getting ran by the New England Patriots. But the next day was absolute insanity because you had a 45-42 shootout between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers. That game was insane. And then, well, we all know what happened next. The Minneapolis Miracle, in my opinion, one of the greatest NFL games of all time between the New Orleans Saints and the Minnesota Vikings. I remember saying after that weekend, that was the best divisional playoff weekend I've ever seen. And I honestly don't think it would be very difficult to top that. Even though one of those 4 games were a dud, I didn't see that really being topped because it's one thing to have 2 like instant classics. It is unheard of to have 4. It is unheard of. And to put into perspective how insane this weekend was, the combined margin of victory was never under 25 in a divisional playoff round ever. This was 13. The margin of victory was actually, my apologies, it was 15. 15. And the Bills Chiefs was the most lopsided of them all, which was 6 points in overtime. Yes, that had the widest margin of victory of the 4 games this weekend. And that's because there was a walk-off touchdown instead of a walk-off field goal like the other 3 games were. And looking at the Bills Chiefs specifically, I have to figure out where this lands on the greatest games I've ever watched. Is it top 5? 100%. Because this was the new Manning Brady. The game established itself as the new Manning and Brady. That is by far the biggest takeaway from the game is that this is the new Manning Brady. And basically, Josh Allen is Peyton Manning, and Patrick Mahomes is Tom Brady. We've established this now. And the best game in NFL history that I always like, okay, that is the best game I've ever seen, was Ravens Broncos 2012, the Mile High Miracle. That was that was the game that I always considered that is the game in NFL history. I've never seen a crazier or more thrilling game than that. And now I have to seriously consider if this one tops that, because it just might. I don't 100% know if it will, just because the Broncos had a pick sixes and special teams touchdowns in that, so it had all three. But to see the two best quarterbacks in the league dueling and have 5 touchdowns in the last 2.5 minutes of regulation, what the heck? How? Just how? 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes of regulation overtime. That's insane. And the fact that a team kicked a field goal with 2 plays with 13 seconds to go, and the fact that a quarterback who threw 9 touchdowns this postseason is eliminated because Patrick Mahomes was even better. What more could you ask for as an NFL fan? This entire weekend, what more could you ask for? This is the weekend that we all love the NFL for. The NFL is king in this country and the best sport in the world. This weekend showed exactly why. And I know what you're looking at, Cameron. Try telling me there's a sport better than the NFL after this weekend. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'll just say it, and it's just my opinion, that a great basketball game, which is rare in the NBA, I will take over any football game that could possibly exist. But that is beside the point, because we can't take away from just how incredible this game was. I mean, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, you call it Brady Manning, reincarnated, but I mean, with their skill sets, they've already surpassed anything Brady and Manning will ever do and what we'll ever see on the field. Their ceilings are just through the roof. Brady and Manning had limited skill sets outside of they're just the two of the most intelligent guys to ever play the game. But the just accuracy, the throw power, what they're able to do in the scramble. I mean, Brady and Manning weren't doing this. But Evan, I'm gonna go to you here. Just how fun was it? How fun is it to witness what we're seeing from Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, knowing that we could end up seeing this matchup and rivalry for the next decade even more?
It's amazing. I feel like it's fresh. Chiefs and Bills aren't two teams that, aside from the Patrick Mahomes era and those few years during the Alex Smith era, not two teams that have had a lot of success, especially the Buffalo Bills over that time period. So I think having two kind of top dogs right now who are kind of fresh, finally putting the pieces together, getting on a roll. The Chiefs are nearing that dynasty-like conversation. The Bills are right there, up there with them in terms of talent, and could make a run for their own. So I love that these two teams are deking it out right now in the AFC, and for it to be Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, there's never been two more impressive quarterbacks in the NFL. I feel like with everyone retiring over the past few years, in terms of like the guys like the Peytons and Brady's, and Brady's obviously still going, but the classic quarterbacks that we had through most of our childhoods are now ceasing to exist in the NFL. So the big question for a long time has been, who are going to be those next guys that are going to step up and really guide teams to greatness consistently? And I think it's finally taking material form in a big way this season, with the success of the Bengals, with the success of the Bills, with the success of the Chiefs. There's so much young arm talent in the NFL, and it's just great to watch, especially when you look at what Patrick Mahomes is doing, the way he has a stronger arm than Russell Wilson ever did. And that's no slight to Russell Wilson, but I'm just comparing them. They're both, Patrick Mahomes is a little bit taller. We all know Russell Wilson's got the short, but in terms of scrambling, Patrick Mahomes looked more impressive than maybe anything I've seen out of Russell Wilson in his career scrambling last night. Just his quick ability to make a decision, make a cut through a gap, and get upfield is uncanny. And then Josh Allen brings power almost like he's Derrick Henry. Not quite, but he's up there. He's a massive man who runs through defenders and can, I mean, I think he injured a player last night, trucking him and running him over. So, and that's something you used to get clowned on if it happened to you by a quarterback as a defensive player. But with Josh and Allen, it's hard to just not look at it and be like, that's the way this guy plays. He's a massive human. You're going to have to get physical to take this quarterback down. And quarterbacks are becoming more of complete NFL players over the years, especially with the way they're coming up as runners through college and then expected to be able to make all the throws as well. The NFL's going to a good place right now. And for Mahomes and Josh Allen to be the faces of that movement is beyond beautiful. It's beyond exhilarating. It's beyond exciting. Watching that matchup last night, watching them go tit for tat offensively, touchdown after touchdown, was incredible. I was watching this game on my bed behind me, just laying down relaxing, and my legs were cramping up getting Charlie horses because of how tense and into the game I was. So I think that says a lot about the league and where it's kind of going in terms of offensive production, especially with quarterbacks just more athletic than we've ever seen them in our lives, despite the guys we've had over the past few years, like Cam Newton and Russell Wilson. These guys are just on a whole different level from that. And we're lucky as fans going forward with the guys that we got.
Michael, the score was 29-26 with 1:54 left. The final score was 42-36. We saw the Tyreek touchdown where he's giving the peace sign to Matt Milano. We thought, okay, game over. There's still time for Buffalo, but they can't do this, right? Well, they get up to midfield, and what happens? Oh, just Gabriel Davis having the greatest NFL playoff game from a receiver of all time with over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, just being open on every single play with the Chiefs obviously keying in on Dawson Knox and Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs had a nothing game, which is quite disappointing after, the hype around the photo and, the Bills being like, oh, they're ready to come back. But making up for Stephon Diggs was Gabriel Davis. And we thought, okay, 13 seconds, there's no way that Kansas City can pull this off, right? Well, they decide to put their secondary, 20, 25 yards back. And what happens? Tyreek Hill gets an open field on the first play and is able to make up, it felt like it was 20, 25 yards with ease, like Buffalo handed it to him, which gave him, one pass to get into field goal range. And who do they find? Oh, yeah, Travis Kelce, as always, in the most clutchest situations to set up the game-tying field goal. And now that's where all drama breaks in, because after 60 minutes of some of the best football we've seen, we flip a coin, go to overtime, the Chiefs get the ball, and the Chiefs get the game-winning touchdown. Michael, before we get into talking about the overtime rules, just have you seen a crazier 2 minutes of football in your lifetime?
I was thinking of that last night, and I would have to go back. The game Sean was talking about the Broncos-Ravens game as his the one NFL game that he looks at that he's like, yeah, it's the greatest game I've ever seen. I would have to the game that I always think of, and throwing any bias aside, is the Cardinals-Packers game from 2015. You have Cardinals down. It goes down the field, gets the Michael Floyd touchdown. Rodgers Hail Mary, the coin flip where the coin doesn't flip. Cardinals get the ball and then get it to Larry Fitzgerald. There's that game, and the Nick Foles Tom Brady Super Bowl was nuts through. But in terms of the last 2 minutes, it's this one, and then we were just talking, a couple of weeks ago of the Chargers Raiders game. Those two, that game and this game right here that we just watched, might be the most insane 2 minutes I've ever watched in my life. Now, Josh Allen makes the drive of his life. Tony Romo kept bringing up on the broadcast that if Josh Allen wants to become a legend, he has to beat a legend, which Patrick Mahomes really, you could already call him that. He's 25 years old, but he's been a starter since 2018, and you could almost already call him that. Josh Allen makes the drive of his life, gives it to Mahomes, and Mahomes makes it look easy. He does what Mahomes does, And then Josh Allen makes the drive of his life again. But we could talk about the overtime rules all day, but that's inexplicable that 13 seconds left. One, why kick it in? Why kick it into the end zone when you could just make a short kick, take 5 seconds off the clock, and then that's less time for Mahomes. But I get the Buffalo defense was number 1 in the league this year, and they were gassed, I'm sure. But how they allowed the Chiefs to, with their 2 biggest weapons on offense, how they allowed the Chiefs' 2 biggest weapons on offense in only 13 seconds get down the field to get into field goal range for a relatively short field goal when it was looking like he might have to attempt like a 60-yarder. That's just a rough way to end it. And when Kansas City got the ball on the coin flip, you knew it was over. You knew it was whoever touched the ball first was winning this game in overtime.
All right, we're 16 minutes into this already. We haven't talked about it yet, but our biggest topic of discussion last night was the overtime rule. And Sean, you're on the no side here of, we can't change these rules. 3/4 of people who voted on the Instagram poll said the overtime rules in the NFL need to change. Oh, and your friend Andrew messaged me as well and said that he wants to fight you now over the rule and said you're not a true sports fan if you voted no. So
I know we got into an argument last night.
All right, gentlemen, but we talk about the flip of a coin determining this game after 60 minutes of just overly exceptional football. People call these rules archaic and that they don't need to exist. And why should a piece of silverware, I don't know what to call it, piece of silver, determine the outcome of a football game? Now, my only counter is that, hey, maybe you got 13 seconds. Don't allow the opposing offense to get 40, 50 yards without any sort of fight whatsoever because you wanted to play conservative, thinking Kansas City was going to score a touchdown. But that is beside the point. So, Sean, you're on the minority side here, so you get out why you think the overtime rules should stay in the NFL, and we will go from there.
The NFL is a team sport, right? This isn't, the NFL is, there are 2 offenses. That's it. No. Defenses are just as important as offense. And forcing your defense to make a stop so your offense can get the ball back is perfection. Why do I say this? Because that actually shows that if you can't get said stop, your season is over and you don't have the defense to win the Super Bowl. Guess what? The Buffalo Bills had the number 1 defense in the regular season. It is up to you to make a stop. You didn't. You failed epically. And I'll say this. People say that, a coin decides the game. For this game, yeah, it did. Because if Buffalo got the ball first, they would have scored a touchdown. For this game, yes. But you can't apply that logic to every single game. And I had to go back to the 2018 Conference Championship Sunday because both games went into overtime. And both had very different results, proving that you can't use this game to change the overtime rules. The first game...
Darkest day in NFL history.
Yes. Pipe down, Saints fan. Anyways, the Patriots went into Arrowhead and played the Chiefs. Tom Brady got the ball first in overtime, went down the field, scored a touchdown, won the game. So the same Chiefs fans that are complaining about overtime rules then are not now. So that also shows. I wonder why. Now, let's go to the game before that. The New Orleans Saints got the ball first to start overtime. Controversy aside on how we got to overtime, there was still overtime. New Orleans Saints had the same exact opportunity as the Patriots to drive down the field and score a touchdown, win the game. Guess what? Drew Brees threw an interception. So how again does a coin decide every overtime game ever? It doesn't. You can't use one game to have a case-by-case basis. Different things happen. Let me go to the Chargers-Raiders. Oh, wait. The Raiders got the ball first and kicked a field goal. That also happened the last time the Chargers and Raiders played in Las Vegas in 2020. Very interesting. Also, the Lions and Steelers didn't score a single point in overtime. Not every game is the same. Everyone's complaining about the overtime rules because of the kind of game this was. But you can't just change it based on emotion like that because every game is different. What if this was a 10-10 game going in overtime? Would the touchdown wins the game? Would anybody be complaining about that? No, because the team probably wouldn't have scored a touchdown on the first possession. So you're complaining about the overtime rules because of the kind of game it was. In a legendary quarterback battle where nobody was going to make a stop, of course you're going to complain about it. But you're going to complain about it when it's a 10-10 defensive slugfest? No, you're not. Like, y'all need to get over yourselves if you think that we need to change the overtime rules. Because, do you want to have 142 to 135? Because that's where this game was heading. If you just keep rotating possessions, it would have just been nonstop scoring, and that's not ideal for player health on the defensive side of the ball. Had to end eventually. The defense has to make a stop. The defense has to be accountable. The Chiefs' defense in 2018, when they gave up that touchdown to the Patriots, their defense wasn't good enough. Well, guess what? They upgraded their defense, and they were able to make some big defensive plays in their Super Bowl winning championship. The Bills now can do the same thing. Also, keep in mind Tre'Davious White will be back next season as well. So, ultimately, you have to make a stop in overtime. If you don't like the overtime rules, make a stop. That simply is the way it is at the end of the day, because there are examples, many of them, where a team either kicks a field goal or turns the ball over or punts the ball on the first possession of overtime. If you look at literally every single overtime this year, I can guarantee you that most of them did not end on a touchdown on the first possession. I can guarantee you that. Okay, so it was just the wrong kind of game for overtime. But guess what? I have no sympathy for Bills fans because your defense allowed the Chiefs to gain 45, 50 yards in 2 plays. The only 2 people I feel bad for today are Josh Allen and Gabriel Davis because they did not deserve to lose this game. The defense, though, did. And that's just the way it is. In a one-and-done format, March Madness is equally as cruel. That's just how one-and-done tournaments are. It's the best form of entertainment in sports. That's just how it is. Just enjoy the fact that we saw possibly the greatest game ever. Quit complaining about overtime rules because you're focusing on the one negative instead of actually acknowledging that we just saw a game that as great of a game as we may never see again.
But does people's hatred of the overtime rule really take away, their enjoyment of the 60 minutes they saw beforehand? And I'll say this, Michael, do we sort of look at games on a case-by-case scenario and go, well, I want Chiefs and Bills to go on forever because I know they're going to just exchange touchdown after touchdown, when we have the polar opposite of Steelers Lions? It's a horrible game. The weather sucks. The field sucks. And we're just like, okay, we need this game to end as quickly as possible. I really don't want to see this game extend. And we're like, okay, I'm okay with if someone scores an opening touchdown here because that means a terrible game is finally over. And yet that terrible, terrible, miserable game would never end, and it ended up in a tie. So do we look at these by case scenarios, or, do we view every game as, okay, well, I don't really want to see the first team, score a touchdown, and that's really it? Because it seems like that is the case where it's just like, okay, a really bad game, just end it as quick as possible. But if it's Bills and Chiefs, Allen and Mahomes, let's have it go on forever.
If you want to do that in the regular season, so be it. If you want Steelers Lions, you want the first team to go down there and score a touchdown, okay, so be it. But in the playoffs, with arguably the 2 best quarterbacks in the National Football League, a quarterback duel for the ages, the quarterback duel of our lifetime, maybe. We were talking about that earlier, not to go on a tangent, that
Better
that
than Brady and Manning already.
Yeah, Mahomes Allen is Brady and Manning, except you're not calling a design quarterback run for Tom Brady on 3rd and 9, or you're not calling a design quarterback run for Peyton Manning on 3rd and 9. These two guys can do something Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, with respect to two of the greatest of all time, could never dream of doing. But that's another tangent. I think in my eyes that if you want to end Steelers Lions like that in the regular season, sure, by all means. Let's see if Jared Goff can go drive down the field and score a touchdown on the first possession. But in the playoffs, no, there shouldn't. Sudden death is not acceptable. Just as great as that game is, I couldn't help but just feel deflated. Yes, it's on the Bills defense, which was the number 1 defense in the NFL. That's on them to not get a stop.
John, I don't want to see facial reactions. Feel free to counter at any point.
That's on them that they did not get a stop with 13 seconds to go, that they let Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, the Chiefs' 2 biggest weapons, to get down the field in 13 seconds for Harrison Butker to kick a relatively manageable field goal and not a 60-yarder like maybe we thought he was going to. That's on them, yes. But it's unacceptable that Josh Allen and the Bills offense didn't at least get a chance in overtime. He should have, at the very least, got a possession. In the regular season, if you want to end Steelers Lions like that, fine. But in the postseason, the rules should change. Josh Allen should have at least, in whatever game it is, if they score a touchdown, the other team should get a possession. Just give them a possession.
My issue with that, like, okay, if you want to compromise, say, okay, keep it the way it is in the regular season, but change the postseason, I can maybe get on board with that. But my biggest issue with that is that you basically erase accountability on the defensive side of the ball. When you have 2 gas defenses, you're just continuously throwing them out there like you're throwing them on the front lines in a war, because that's essentially what was going on here. This game would have probably had 5 touchdowns if by your logic, the scoreboard would have been notched up ridiculously, like a Big 12 game. And you're essentially letting the fact that the defenses were incompetent be bailed out because, we don't need to stop them because we know our offense is just going to score. That erases defensive accountability. And that's the biggest problem. I understand that we saw the greatest quarterback battle ever, but we also can't just have recency bias and look at the fact that, hey, like this specific game, we needed this to keep going. I talked about Ravens Broncos. There wasn't a single score until double overtime. And that was also a great quarterback battle between Joe Flacco, who was playing the best football of his career, and Peyton Manning, who was also playing some of the best football of his career. There wasn't a point scored until double overtime. And those were the same exact overtime rules we have now. Okay, so essentially, that game had defensive accountability. Both teams were making stops until the Ravens intercepted Peyton Manning in overtime. I understand that.
Yeah, I'm not bright because I heard there wasn't a point score till double overtime. Like it was literally 0-0 until double overtime.
Yeah, sorry. There wasn't a point scored in the first 15 minutes of overtime. There were no points scored until about a minute and a half into double overtime. My apologies. But my point is this. If everyone really got their wish and the Bills got another possession, what motivation does a gas Bills defense have to make a stop knowing that Josh Allen's just going to score right after possession? It erases that accountability. It erases that.
In the playoffs, the teams can just phone it in, Sean. Defenses can just, be like, yeah, we can just allow the quarterback to score because we're tired. Because that's how playoff football works, right?
I'm talking about this game specifically. like think about it from the perspective of the Bills defense. They couldn't stop Patrick Mahomes worth the fill in the blank. They couldn't make a stop, but like, you know what?
They held them
Like,
to 8 of 13 on third down. They got 5 third down stops in the game. You're telling me they couldn't have done it once in overtime?
after giving up 45 yards in 13 seconds, which is one of the most deflating defensive possessions in the history of the league. No.
The Chiefs defense didn't have to do anything.
So
they couldn't get
earned the
stopped
right
all game.
not to. They earned the right not to.
This isn't all. Yeah, this isn't all on Buffalo.
Flip is earning something. I get to flip a coin, heads or tails. If I call heads, I just earned something.
Well, I will also say this, and in credit to the best YouTuber, in my opinion, Urinating Tree for tweeting this. If you don't win a game in regulation, do you deserve to have the same chance to win as you do in regulation? There has to be risk taken in extra time because you couldn't get it done through 60 minutes. And also just saying, NFL is a team game. And yes, there is some chance and risk involved in overtime. Guess what? The Bills also were the one that could have gotten the coin flip, right? Just saying. Like, guess what? They didn't.
I mean, you're leaving that up to like the laws of physics and whether the ref chooses to do the stupid that or it hits the ground, and it's up to however gravity plays out. So are we really saying, yeah, that's how a football game is that really earned, or is that chance? Did the Chiefs win on chance? That's all the question is.
No, because they went down the field and scored a touchdown to win it. They also got themselves into overtime. Of course, there's going to be aspects of by chance. That's the negative effect of not winning in 60 minutes. Wow.
All right, new counter. To determine, keep the overtime rule, but to determine who gets the ball, I like Evan's idea of having a full-on Oklahoma drill. Get your 2 hardest hitting guys. Whoever goes down, that team has to play defense. But in all seriousness, Evan, where do we go with the overtime rules? Because we've seen college football. We were like, okay, we love college football overtime rules, yet we have the LSU Texas A&M game that completely killed the rule by going to 7 overtimes. And then we had the absolute mess that was Illinois and Penn State back earlier this season that went to 9 overtimes because either teams exchanged 2-point conversions or they kept failing to convert on 2-point conversion. So it seems like there's no right answer to how to do overtime, but how should it be done?
So my kind of crazy grand idea I have about this is if you're going to do the coin toss, fine, but give each team 1 possession. And then after that 1 possession, if each team has 1 offensive possession, if they both score, the second one, if the first one scores and they go for a field goal, the second one scores, they have the opportunity to go for 2 to end it if they want and take that risk. Thing is, if they tie it after those 2 possessions, I believe the game should change. You should go to a round of 2-point conversions, similar to college football, after 1 drive from each.
What?
Hear me out. It's 1 full drive. It's not starting from the 35-yard line. It's not starting from – you're doing a full drive. And if both teams score after that, fine. You go to 2-point conversions. If you're not able to get – if you tie in 2-point conversions in 3 attempts, yes, put the ball on the 15-yard line with a long snapper, a holder, and a kicker. That's it. No defense, and you go back and forth, backing up 5 yards every attempt. Get every facet of football involved.
I think we've combined a home run derby into this. Our NFL playoff game.
The whole kickers. Get the kickers in the game. Special teams.
Somebody tell me why I'm into this.
Y'all are crazy.
I guess to be a little less crazy about that, and I don't mind it. I think it would bring a new, side to the game, would make kickers important and be like, hey, look how, kickers we look at in college and NFL, like there was some bad kicking on certain weekends. So now maybe that, in case that point happens, it goes, okay, kickers, you have a bigger responsibility than what you may have thought. And even still, most of them still stink, even with the hefty load they have. But my only counter would be, okay, if we want to keep the OT rules, let's just tweak it a little bit. If you score a touchdown on the first possession, if you choose to settle for the PAT, the other team gets a possession. Now, if you choose to go for 2, like I think you mentioned, if you convert the 2-pointer, game over, you win. Congrats. That's 2 times you got into the end zone on that possession, game over. If you miss the PAT, or if you choose to go for 2 and you miss it, the other team gets the ball. Now they have a chance. And if they kick the PAT, game over. Because now that brings back the risk reward of, okay, well, if you miss the 2, now the other team can go down, drive down the field. And if they score and kick the PAT, it's game over. But if we just settled for the PAT, then, now we have an exchange of plays. But that 2-point conversion, I think, pays dividends. It's just not when it's the only thing you can get, like what we got in the Illinois-Penn State game.
I'd even be fine with it being sudden death after the first 2 scores. Like after each team gets 1 possession, and if they both score touchdowns and get the point after, and they're tied at, let's say 0-0 going into overtime, they're at 7-7 following each of their first 2 possessions, I'd be fine with the next score being like sudden death. Like, okay, now your defense is required to step up and get a stop. But I think that both offenses should get a chance to start off with, and then at that point, someone's defense has to make a stop.
I actually really love that proposal you just made, Cameron, because that still goes along with what I want, which is I want defense to be accountable. If you can give up a touchdown, but you can somehow stop them for 2, then maybe you have earned the right to give the ball back to your offense. I actually really dig that. My problem, Evan, with your proposal is that simply the scoring would get absurd. Like LSU Texas A&M, or it would get new levels of absurd with Illinois and Penn State. Would it be fun? Yes, but especially as a traditional football fan like I am, because remember, I'm still all about the pocket quarterbacks. I know that there's only 1 left in the league, but I mean, it would be fun. But I think Cameron's proposal actually is something I would not mind the NFL doing next postseason.
I mean, the current Patriots quarterback's kind of a pocket quarterback. He ain't gonna
Who's the one
have no
pocket
design
quarterback
runs
in the league?
Tom Brady.
I could name like 3 more. How is Tom Brady the only pocket quarterback left
Mac
in the
Jones,
league? Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Well, let me clear.
Aaron Rodgers.
Jared Goff.
Aaron
Matthew
Rodgers is a
Stafford.
great athlete, but
Stafford's
he's
not a runner.
Aaron Rodgers is a great athlete, but he's not a
Yeah, you're not
running.
running. Yeah, you're not running design plays. You're not running design runs for Stafford either.
Kirk Cousins. You're not running design QB runs for Kirk Cousins.
Derek Carr.
Derek Carr, yeah. There's no design runs for Derek Carr. Derek Carr just scrambles because he has no confidence in the pocket anymore.
I mean, I got more.
Yes, I was more referring to the star pocket QBs of the 2000s.
Well, you should have said that then.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yes, my apologies.
Michael, what's your proposal? What do you think? Or do you like one of our ideas?
Really, I'm just gonna beat the dead horse. Both teams get the ball. I like Evans. I really like Evans a lot, actually. But no matter what, both teams need to get the ball. If you want to go to sudden death after that, sure. Not if a team kicks field goal though. If both teams score a touchdown and on their first possession of overtime, and then you want to go to sudden death, maybe we can have that conversation. But it can't be a field goal. It has to be a touchdown. Honestly, I like the kicker idea too.
Yeah. All right. To go with Evans one, but to tweak it a little bit, how about both teams get 1 possession in overtime. If either they're tied after or neither of them score, we go to sudden death like field goals and treat it like penalty kicks. 40,
But I don't
40
think
yard.
it shouldn't add to the
I like
score
that.
of points. It should be like PKs where like you
That's
get the
what I
green
mean. Like
light.
it should be like PKs, but it has to be 40 plus. So let's say you both make on your first one, move it back to the 45. So kind of like your idea, 45, kick that. If you both miss, you stay. If you both make, we move it back another 5 yards. So some form of PK to the extent. Even if you wanted to keep it at the 40, fine. Best of 7. Whatever you want. I like the idea of having more responsibility for the kickers, though.
And just imagine how certain teams have an advantage in that aspect. I mean, just think the Ravens. They have Justin Tucker, or you look at a Harrison Butker, or Matt Gay. Matt Gay was fantastic for the Rams this year. You just look at the teams with great kickers, just how much of an advantage that puts them at, and it's almost like an incentive to. I harp on this all the time. NFL teams do not appreciate a good kicker until they don't have a good kicker. Just think of the incentive. This is for general managers and personnel guys to make sure they have a solid kicker on their roster if something like this existed. So we don't have to get to the playoffs and Blair Walsh misses a 19-yarder, or we don't have to sit through one of those years where the team has 4 different kickers.
Roberto Aguayo. How about that? That name ring a bell?
He was supposed to be good.
Second round draft pick for the Buccaneers.
Florida State, Roberto Aguayo.
Speaking of good kickers, how about Evan McPherson for the Cincinnati Bengals? Ice cold water in his veins, sending the Cincinnati Bengals to the AFC Championship game, a franchise that we thought, maybe we'll never see them win a playoff game. But here they are with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and all those weapons on offense. They're in the AFC title game, and the game is exactly how I thought it'd play out. Tennessee went back to relying on, hey, Derrick Henry, please go make a play. Even though Cincinnati's going to stack the box on you, you have to go make a play. And what happened? Tannehill got conservative and, went back to playing his old style. And Derrick Henry didn't do a lot. And Tennessee was like, oh, well, what do we do now? Even though he hadn't played since Halloween. The Tennessee is so frustrating to watch because they have a lot of talent. They have 2 great receivers in Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. Tannehill, we know, can be formidable when he chooses to, but when he has the running back behind him, it's like, okay, I can shut it off and be a bottom 10 quarterback in the league. And how about Mike Vrabel being stupid enough in the 4th quarter on 3rd down go, all right, we have Tannehill to throw, who hasn't been great this game, or we have the most dominant running back in the NFL. Okay, Tannehill, you're going to throw the ball in the most clutchest scenarios. And what happened? He throws an interception, as we all expected.
Not to mention that was super tight coverage, too.
Exactly. It's just this team is as frustrating as it is to watch Lamar Jackson, be down and not be able to come back because we can't rely on him to throw the ball. Tennessee, just no more. No more. Get either somehow fix Tannehill. I don't know what fixes this team. It seems as though they peaked. They were the number 1 team in the AFC despite not having Derrick Henry for most of the season. And here they are, and they throw away a golden opportunity to make a run for the Super Bowl. Now, granted, I thought they would have gotten blown out either way if they played Kansas City or Buffalo in the AFC title game, but this franchise is something else when it comes to playing in the playoffs. Evan, what does Tennessee do next year? Do they move on from Tannehill? Do you look at Mike Vrabel and go, wow, look at this guy's calling when Derrick Henry's active? It feels like Tennessee was worse with Derrick Henry than when they were without him.
I agree with that, and I think we kind of called that on the show last Friday. I think it might have been Sean who said Derrick Henry, or it might have been.
I'm the only one that said the Bengals were going to pull off the upset. So
Yeah, but I was banking on Derrick Henry having a game, but he only averaged 3.1 yards per carry on 20 attempts. Foreman had 66 yards on 4 attempts, averaging 16 and a half yards per carry. Henry wasn't there. Foreman was, and they didn't lean on him enough. I don't know if you guys are watching the same game as I was, but Derrick Henry looked stiff. He didn't look like he had that quick step. He looked like he needed a few weeks to get that back in game action. But when you lose in one game, you don't really get that. So I mean, hopefully he's able to have a good rehab offseason as well and get used to that metal plate in his foot. But at the same time, he looked a step slow, and I understand why they'd go to throw the ball there, but I also don't understand why you don't use your other running back, who's Foreman, who's carried you through most of the late season and put up great numbers while doing it. So I think there's some questions to be raised. I don't know if Derrick Henry was going to be the answer for them in that game, but Tannehill opened up the game on the first play by throwing an interception. I swear, I turned on the game right after the kickoff had happened, and it was the first play. Tannehill was dropping back and just right into a Bengals defender, and I knew it was over from that start because you can't play that sloppy as the number 1 seed starting off in the divisional round. You have to come out hot. You have to come off firing. You have to look like you've been prepping for the last 2 weeks to kill the team that's coming out of the wild card round, and they didn't do that. And to the Bengals credit, Evan McPherson, you opened with him 4 for 4 on field goals, including a 54-yarder, and hit his extra point attempt. The Bengals don't win that game without his kicking. And just real quick, for the Titans going forward, you just got to make sure Derrick Henry is ready to go for next season, healthy, has that quick step back where he can burst through the hole. For Tannehill, he's got to clean it up. You got to figure it out because you can't choke like that in the playoffs. But also, the Titans were going through a bit of a they pulled through as the number 1 seed, but they had a tough end of the season. They had a lot of injuries this year, so I think there's still hope for them, but I don't know if Tannehill's going to be the Super Bowl winner for them when it comes down to it.
Now, I think there's a video going around. Did the Bengals play the Packers this year on the road? Yeah.
That was the game with 5 missed field goals in a row.
Oh, yeah. That was the early season game. Yeah.
No, I think it was in Cincinnati.
It was one of those, but the Packers are getting introduced. I think it was Evan McPherson, but everybody posted the video and they were like, he was kicking a field goal while the Packers were being introduced during their intro and all that. And everybody was like, yeah, we knew Evan McPherson was going to hit it if he's going to do something as foul as this. But here's my thing with Tennessee. And this is kind of an outlandish comparison, but I have a fascination for airplanes and airports because I live right next to one when I'm in LA. But when you have, your planes, way under the maximum weight, you're going to be fine. Maybe it's half full because it's a red-eye flight or whatever. That plane, flies at its normal speed and gets to its destination on time. With if a plane's, at the maximum weight and it's full capacity, guess what? That plane still got to fly at the exact same speed and get to its destination at the exact same time. Mike Vrabel, if he had a maximum weight plane and full capacity, would say, guys, sorry, we got to make a stop in Houston for something real quick because our plane's not going to make it all the way. Or he's going to be like, we got to land somewhere to take out a little bit of fuel to lighten this plane up. It's just, you cannot change what works. Tennessee had it going and working. We had a good balance of finding the receivers along with the running backs of Dante Foreman and what is it? Hilliard. I forget his first name though. But when it's Derrick Henry out there, they just go and okay, feed Derrick Henry. This is the only way we can win. He's your only path to victory, even though you won 12 games this year. I don't understand why make such the outlandish change. It just annoyed me, and which is exactly why I picked Cincinnati to win the game. It's Cincinnati. Oh, and by the way, I'm not going to mention who said this, but someone on Saturday said we need more Joe Burrows in comparison to their situation. Won't say who on the stream, but somebody said we need more Joe Burrows. That's how you change a culture. And y'all can interpret that to whoever you think said that. But someone said we need more Joe Burrows. And I was like, you know what? I can't use that in my writing, but that is the best quote I've gotten from you. Thank you. Just, yeah, this person was correct. Joe Burrow is the man. Turned LSU, flipped LSU, around, went 13-0, one of the greatest college football seasons we've ever seen. Now it's Cincinnati, and he's playing a team in the AFC title game that he beat, towards the end of the regular season. So Cincinnati has a very good chance. This is a great matchup for them, given their offensive weapons, because this could be another just back and forth game that could wind up in overtime to everyone's chagrin. But all right. NFC, because we got to keep the stream going. We got class in just about an hour or so. The NFC, the 49ers and Packers. What, just old school smash mouth, just run it up the gut game. Just, snowing, it's ice cold in Lambeau Field. Just it was the textbook Lambeau Field game. Sean, you have turned on the Patriots and have become the biggest 49ers fan on the planet. That I know. The 49ers defense. D'Amico Ryans is going to get a head coaching job. Just what can you say about this team that was able, after the first drive with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers just clicking on all cylinders, you're like, okay, this game is over, ladies and gentlemen. And then to just turn it around and go, okay, guess what, Green Bay? You're only going to kick a field goal the rest of the way. Just what does that say about what Ryans has done with this team, especially the year after Robert Saleh left and, his great defenses?
First of all, Cameron says I turn from a Patriots to a 49ers fan when he turns from a Raiders to a Saints fan every postseason.
Untrue.
Stop.
Were the Saints in the playoffs?
I live with you. I see this every year. Anyways.
Saints weren't in the playoffs this year, bud. Not to mention that I go back to, supporting Reggie Bush in his NFL career like 15 years ago. Your 49ers love came from out of nowhere, buddy.
The Patriots and 49ers dynasties are linked and they're interchangeable, and one doesn't happen without the other. But that's beside the point.
So they're linked because the 49ers picked Giovanni Carmazzi over Brady? And Brady was a Niners fan growing up?
Because Tom Brady was inspired to play football after being
Tom Brady went to a 49ers game, and now that just links the two together.
Just saying, who was Tom Brady's idol? The guy who engineered the dynasty prior. Just saying, apparently I know
every kid in the 80s liked Joe Montana.
Who actually became Joe Montana? Tom Brady. I'm just saying, y'all say I'm a historian. That is my logic.
Hey, guys, Tom Brady wouldn't have been made without the 49ers.
In a way, yeah.
I bet
he's literally from that area.
I bet you guys were only expecting one Giovanni Carmazzi reference on the stream this week.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Back to D'Amico Ryans, though.
Legend.
The fact that the 49ers are in the NFC title game when they were essentially left for dead in the first half against the Rams in Week 18, and the Saints were about to make the playoffs instead, is nothing short of miraculous. D'Amico Ryans was a great linebacker for the Houston Texans. He was a defensive leader and earned the respect of his teammates. And that's exactly what he's done as the 49ers defensive coordinator. He has taken a team that, admittedly, has a bottom 10 secondary in the NFL, and they have made this defense formidable. The linebackers are as coached as well as any unit in the NFL. They know exactly where to be. Fred Warner having the discipline to punch the bottom of Mercedes Lewis instead of trying to tackle him, that is elite coaching right there, knowing what to do in that situation. And that punch out started a dominant defensive performance by the Packers after an opening drive that left us all thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a long game, isn't it? The 49ers defense is what got them the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And it's exactly what happened now. The defense is phenomenal. Nick Bosa and Fred Warner are two superstar players, and that front seven is very well coached. And the secondary actually held their own. Outside Devontae Adams, they did not let a single player get free on them. It kind of reminds me of college basketball a decade ago, where Jimmer Fredette was the best player in college basketball back in 2011. Jimmer Fredette would score 30 points every single game. It would hit just some of the most absurd shots you'll ever see. But Billy Donovan, the head coach of Florida, when they knocked out Jimmer Fredette in 2011, said, all right, we're going to let Jimmer score 30. We're not going to let anyone else get over 10. And that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what the Florida Gators did, and they eliminated BYU in the Sweet 16 in 2011. The 49ers defense did the exact same thing with the Packers wide receivers. We can talk about how, Aaron Rodgers didn't throw to them. Aaron Rodgers didn't build a relationship with them and all that. But at the end of the day, 49ers did not let anybody other than Devontae Adams get open. They didn't. They shut them down. And that is great coaching. Punching the ball out of Mercedes Lewis, that is great coaching. D'Amico Ryan should be a head coach next season because he has already proven that he can get the most out of his players. And I'm just saying, there are teams that could use this. Raiders. there are definitely teams out there that could use that kind of defensive guy that can get the most out of his players. And with the lack of true diverse hires, this one would work perfectly because he is qualified. That game against the Packers was the best job interview of the playoffs, bar none.
Evan, it seems like everyone is, basking in the glory of watching Aaron Rodgers get eliminated from the playoffs and all the jokes related to COVID and whatever. It got old to an extent, but Aaron Rodgers made himself a villain this season, wanted to be the villain, and got the villain send off pretty much. So, is this the end? I have a theory of where Rodgers could go next, and it involves the team he just played. To go back home, go back to an area you're familiar with. Jimmy G not really getting the job done, have to rely on your defense. But, did we just watch Aaron Rodgers make his last start in the green and yellow at Lambeau?
Honestly, that question has been bothering me these past couple of days now. Like, watching him walk off that field, it made me feel a certain way. If you watch the show, you probably know I'm first a Chargers fan, but most of my family comes from Wisconsin and are diehard Packers fans, and it's where I've
actually been interested to ask you this, but when you think about it now, like we talk about Cleveland and LeBron James being their hero, but it's like Milwaukee's kind of got a question on that. Milwaukee with the Wisconsin area, are we looking at Giannis is our savior, or is Aaron Rodgers like still king in Wisconsin?
Honestly, I don't know, and that's a question that I'll actually have to ask my relatives these next few games or next few days, and I'll get back an answer on Wednesday. But honestly, with A-Rod leaving, and I feel like he did kind of make a clown of himself this season, hanging out with Dr. Joe Rogan and all. Whatever worked for him. I'm no scientist. I can't judge. Rodgers got COVID and ended up fine, but it's still just a joke of a situation that happened this season, and it's whatever. And it's going to be weird if that's what's most remembered from Rodgers last year as a Packer. Is that he was a anti-vaxxer who sought his own treatment and lost in the playoffs to the Niners, and like those are the highlights of his last season in Green Bay, and I think it's a little disappointing. My entire life since I've started following football, Rodgers has been the starting quarterback for the Packers and has been one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league my entire life. It's hard. It's weird. This is weirdly when Phillip Rivers stopped playing for the Chargers, that was one thing for me. And it was like, oh well, he never won us any championships though. With Rodgers leaving Green Bay right now, it's kind of like hands on your hips, hands on your knees, keeled over, like, what is happening? It feels like an existential crisis. You've had one guy for so long following Brett Favre, and then the Jordan Love saw, like, everything that's going into the end of this Aaron Rodgers running Green Bay is just disgusting, from the organization, from him in the media, from everything. It's not what you wanted. It's not what the league wanted. It's not what I wanted. But Giannis or Rodgers, Giannis just brought home the NBA title for the first time since like the 60s or 70s. So that's huge. And I think Milwaukee's been basking in that, but also nothing replaces Green Bay Packers football. So I think there's mixed emotions right now. And I think a lot of Wisconsinites are going to have a lot of mixed emotions about it, but definitely hope it's not Rodgers' last game in Green Bay. I hope he's disappointed enough by the way it ended to come back and try and have a better year next year. But if that doesn't happen, it's the end of an era for Green Bay, and they might not have any sort of success anytime in the next 5-10 years, especially with Jordan Love, their heir to the throne at quarterback. They need to keep Rodgers, keep everything intact, and try and make another run for it. And if they can't do that, they're screwed. They're done for a little bit. The Packers are going to have a top 10 pick in the NFL draft without Rodgers.
Michael, it seemed like there were a handful of missed opportunities throughout the game for both sides, really. And we just mentioned the fact that Jimmy G threw some god-awful balls, like across the field, like lobs that, any, great cornerback, would pick that ball off and take it back to the house. And then we're talking about a Green Bay route potentially. But Michael, you mentioned that Green Bay may have had some missed opportunities there. So the floor is yours.
So what I wanted to go in on is just the missed opportunities this past decade by Rodgers and the Packers.
Yeah.
Evan,
by the way, Mason Crosby as well, bad season.
Just the Packers special teams in general. Except Bajorquez wasn't horrible. Like Evan, as you can tell, and as I've mentioned on the stream, I'm a Phoenix native. I've been a Cardinals fan since I started watching football. My family are all Steeler fans, but I have a lot of Wisconsin relatives too. So I can understand how they're feeling, and I'm kind of curious about that too. Giannis has ascended Rodgers, but I've seen them watch Packers football. It's a different beast than any football environment than I've ever been in. But if this is it for Aaron Rodgers in the Green Bay Packers, if this is it for this era, just nothing but disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. They won the Super Bowl in 2010. They beat the Steelers in that Super Bowl. I don't even think that, as much talent as there was on that team on both sides of the ball, I don't even know if that's the best Packers team that Aaron Rodgers has been on. And just think, 2011, start there, 15-1. Their only loss that year was to a Chiefs team that had the number one pick in the draft the next year. 2012, lit up by Colin Kaepernick and a read option at Candlestick. 2013, 8-7-1, just barely got into the playoffs because they beat the Bears on a Hail Mary. 2014, Brandon Bostic muffs on the hands team, muffs the kick. Seahawks come all the way back when they looked on a fake field goal, when it looked like they were dead that entire game up until late into it, and then lost on that long pass in overtime to Jermaine Kearse. 2015, we're down, had just gotten blown out by the Cardinals in week 17. Then Rodgers, a miraculous Hail Mary to Jeff Janis. And then the coin doesn't flip, and then Larry Fitzgerald does Larry Fitzgerald postseason things. And they lose that game at the very beginning of overtime, just like they did to the Cardinals in 2009. They lose on a miraculous play in overtime. 2016, blown out by the Falcons in the NFC Championship. 2017, Aaron Rodgers breaks his collarbone against the Vikings. 2018, they are blown out by the Niners in the championship game where Jimmy G only threw 8 passes in the entire game. That's how good that Niners rushing attack was that last year. And also how ridiculous. Jimmy Garoppolo only threw 8 passes that entire game. 2020, lost to the Bucs. The Scotty Miller touchdown at the end of the half. The Kevin King game, as you could say. 30 years of 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You got 2 Super Bowls and 3 appearances out of it.
Look, I know if you're from Wisconsin, you're going to hate me saying this, but I always considered Brett Favre the most overrated quarterback I've ever seen or just heard from in my lifetime.
100% agree with that statement.
Can't
My
stand Brett
grandma
Favre.
is on her way to Flagstaff right now. She'll be at your front door in approximately 6.5 hours.
I'm gonna have
looking
to-
forward to the discussion.
I shall call my mom's cousins and all my Wisconsin relatives.
That's blasphemy.
That is, you
It's
might
true,
not
though.
live if you went into a supper club in New Holstein, Wisconsin.
Look, I'll say
Where
it.
if you
Green
go
Bay's
into
gonna
a
hate
supper
even
club
more.
in New
I
Holstein,
preferred
Wisconsin, where a lot of my family is from.
He
You may
wasn't
not
that good
live
after
to see another
97.
day.
Hey, if you want me to double down, I'll just say I preferred Minnesota Brett Favre over Green Bay Brett Favre.
Oh,
You take that
that
back.
is
That one
That's
season where they got
ridiculous
to the
coming from
title
me.
game and Brett
Violence
Favre
this morning.
squandered it, I preferred that Brett Favre. That was a fun Minnesota Vikings team.
Yeah, I liked watching him get killed against the Saints too.
Thanks a lot, Bounty Gate.
Hey man,
Brett
all he had to
Favre
do was
wasn't that
not
good
throw
after
across his
97.
body, and the Vikings would have sent it to over, or he could have, won the game.
All he had to do was not play for Minnesota.
You could take a knee and try a 56-yard field goal. But
Best
anyway,
call ever.
And then the 49ers game yesterday. Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo made some atrocious throws. He does have a thumb and shoulder injury, so you got to give him some credit for gunning it out. But he made the play. He made plays when he needed to. And that play where Rodgers finds Aaron Jones wide open, and he did that little stutter step move for whatever reason. Maybe if he doesn't do that, I don't know if he scores on that play, but maybe he does, and the game's completely different.
Why did he not run out of bounds? Why?
And a blocked field goal and a blocked punt in the same game. Just if this is the end of an era in Green Bay, what are they going to do next? Their cap situation is one of the worst in the league, and coming up this next year. Just this past year.
Well, I
So
have
they
a
could re-sign
grand
Aaron
idea
Jones,
of what
Kevin King,
Green
and
Bay is
Mercedes
going to
Lewis.
do.
They had to re-sign Adrian Amos. They had to restructure Adrian Amos, David Bakhtiari, Mason Crosby, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, and Billy Turner just to re-sign those 3 you guys to re-sign Jones, King,
I
and
have
Mercedes
a
Lewis.
grand idea, the master plan that's been waiting in the wings for the Raiders for about 7 or 8 years now. But now they're going to execute the plan. All that suffering is finally getting in, because you know why? Derek Carr is going to get his confidence back, because the Raiders are going to trade for Devontae Adams and try to pull off what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are doing this season. Fresno State is back, and it's going to be in Las Vegas. Amazing. All right, he's a free agent. Sean, doesn't matter. Devontae Adams is going to be wearing the silver and black in 2022.
I'm just saying there's a huge difference between signing somebody and trading for somebody.
But maybe that's what turns it around. Maybe Derek Carr needs that one wide receiver to turn it around, because they haven't had a number 1 since Amari Cooper, a true number 1. A tight end cannot be your number 1 receiver unless he's Travis Kelce. But even still, they have Tyreek Hill. The Raiders had Hunter Renfrow this season. Last season, it was Nelson Aguilar. Not number 1s. Devontae Adams is that guy. And if Derek Carr and Devontae Adams can find that chemistry they had in Fresno State, I'm just saying. It's fun times again for that Raider offense. All right, let's close out this NFL discussion with what could be the wildest, probably was the wildest game, the most stupid of fourth quarters we've ever seen in our lifetime, and that was the ending of the Rams-Bucks. Rams doing anything and everything to have Tom Brady bring back that 2017 Super Bowl comeback against Atlanta. And around the same time, too, the Rams went up 27-3. Of course, they didn't want to go for 2 and make it 28-3, and then all hell would have broke loose on social media. But it did. It did, because you know why? Tom Brady and the Bucks came back down 27-3 to tie the game up. And the Rams, I believe, were up 14 with 4 minutes ago with the ball in their possession. And still, Tom Brady did Tom Brady things, but in the end, Cooper Kupp does Cooper Kupp things. Even with Tampa Bay secondary, as dumb as it is in that play, to allow the guy, the Triple Crown winner, to get behind you, you can't make dumb mistakes like that. Yes, Big Sky legend out of Eastern Washington, Cooper Kupp. Who was his quarterback? Was it Vernon? Jeez. The worst Oregon quarterback of all time. Gentlemen, just what was this fourth quarter? We had 2 straight fumbles, by the way. 2 straight fumbles that led to turnovers. And then Tom Brady did Tom Brady things, but just not enough. Sean, what do we make of this game? Is this more okay? The Rams are showing signs that they might lose to San Francisco next Sunday in SoFi, which would be hilarious. Or is this just Tom Brady, pulling Tom Brady miracles and nearly pulled another one?
As much as I would love to sit here and praise Tom Brady for, oh my gosh, he did again. On like the 28-3 comeback against the Falcons, this was more of an implosion than a comeback. To me, when you look at how a comeback happens, there is a big difference between an implosion and a comeback. Obviously, it can be both. An implosion is more of the team choking more than the other team coming back. The 28-3 was much more of a comeback than implosion. Yes, the Falcons did implode when they were up 28-20, and then they went backwards after that Julio Jones catch. That aspect was an implosion. But for the most part, that was just the Patriots just made a legendary comeback. But the 27-3 comeback, that was an implosion. Straight up, plain and simple. Well, we had a snap that went 20 yards backwards before the ball even stopped rolling. That was one of the weirdest plays I've ever seen in my life. And I literally screenshotted my Twitter feed when that bad snap happened because everyone was saying the same thing. What is happening? This game is drunk. One of the weirdest plays I've ever seen. And that was only the start of absolute madness. I don't think I've ever really seen Jalen Ramsey get cooked like that by Mike Evans. That was, it was a great throw by Brady.
Number 1 cornerback. Yeah, right.
He is. I just don't understand. I've said that he's the best corner for the last 5 years. I still wholeheartedly believe that's true, which makes what happened on that play all the more inexplicable. How the heck do you get absolutely burned like that? Yes, Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer. Yes, Mike Evans is an elite talent, but jeez, he got cooked there. And credit to Brady for dropping that on a dime. Also, Cam Akers. Oh, boy. The dude has had one of the most miraculous comeback stories, only to fumble twice in the game. Remember, the Rams could have been up more, but he fumbled at the end of the first half because we all learned that landing on your head is the same thing as your knee being down. That's something every single one of us learned because I didn't know that. I don't think anybody knew that going across social media. Not even the top NFL sports talk people even knew that was a rule. I didn't. But he fumbled to give the ball back. And yes, Tampa Bay had playoff Lenny to help get the Buccaneers 2 touchdowns during that comeback. Yes, Brady did good things, but the Rams with Cam Akers fumbles, with whatever the heck that snap was, that was an implosion. But Cameron, your ultimate question, what do you make of this game? Here's my answer. Matthew Stafford has proven he is finally a Hall of Famer. He needed this game to do it. Yes, Matthew Stafford already had a case for the Hall of Fame. And I think I still would have given Matthew Stafford a Hall of Fame vote even before he joined the Rams.
It took you this long to validate his Hall of Fame status.
What did I just say 5 seconds ago?
But you just said that this postseason run is validating it.
It is validating it because he finally has that legacy moment. He finally has the moment in the postseason. He's had a lot of great moments in the regular season.
You're kidding, right? You're joking. The man did the most with the very least for a decade in Detroit, and you're saying now he needed a playoff win for an overly stacked franchise to validate his Hall of Fame status?
I didn't say he needed it. Like I just said,
You just said he needed that legendary postseason moment.
Let me finish. What I said was that for 12 years he carried a Lions franchise, but now that he is on this Rams team, not only has he cemented himself first ballot Hall of Famer instead of just Hall of Famer general, because before this he was like kind of Kurt Warner status where it was like, okay, maybe it'll take him a couple years. Now he's first ballot. But also, if he continues to play like this for the Rams for at least the next 5 to 7 years, is he in discussion for top 20, top 15 greatest quarterback of all time, maybe? If he continues this for the next 5 to 7 years.
So let's get this straight. Let's summarize what Sean just said, by the way. Needed a legendary postseason moment to validate his Hall of Fame status. Compared him to Kurt Warner, who won a Super Bowl with St. Louis. 3, just said Matthew Stafford needs to play another 5 to 7 years in LA when Matthew Stafford's like 35.
33, I think.
33. Let's just sum that up. Matthew Stafford needs to be playing at an elite level for another 5 to 7 years, and he's first ballot.
I didn't say no. That's not what I said. You're wrong.
Yes, it is what you're saying.
No, it isn't. You
just invalidated this 12 years at Detroit and said he need to have this moment in the playoffs to do that.
But I said he's a Hall of Famer those 12 years. I also said that if he continues this level, he could end up being in the discussion of top 20, top 15 greatest quarterbacks of all time if he continues this. That's what I said. He right now, after Sunday's game, he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Okay, please get my words correctly.
Michael, I need give me something positive, Michael. I need some mouthwash after hearing that. No, because your semantics are that he's validated in LA and not Detroit. That's what you're saying. We talked about this a long time ago when he moved. I made the house comparison. I'm not bringing it up again because I said it 4 times on radio. But you're only validated when everything is all neat and pretty around you and not Detroit. You're validated when you're in LA, not when you're in Detroit.
I don't think he's first ballot. I think he'll get in. I think he'll get in. I don't think he's first ballot.
All right, that's it. Have a great rest of the stream. It's all yours now. Congrats. I'm out.
Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback.
He is a great quarterback, Evan. He's one of the best of this generation.
1,000 career passing yards. That's not Hall of Fame numbers for you. 361 passing touchdowns. That's not Hall of Fame numbers for you.
I think he's a Hall of Famer 100%. I just don't think he's first ballot. I don't think he's
Michael, he just saved the Rams from a 27-3 deficit with 2 absolute legendary daggers.
There you go. The first thing you bring up is the LA Rams. Not forget all the 12 years in Detroit where he made the most of that franchise. It's only in LA where it's look at Matthew Stafford's moments. Jeez. Just the lack of perspective we have here. It took Matthew Stafford getting handed everything to know, hey, this guy's actually a pretty good quarterback. I can't believe what is being said on this stream.
I'm not validating Detroit at all. Do I have to say for a fifth time? Matthew Stafford's a Hall of Famer based on Detroit
first thing you
alone.
mentioned, the first thing you said after Michael said was, "Look at what he did yesterday." Not look
Because
at this man
that's
and Calvin Johnson having
you
the
were to ask
best
Matthew
chemistry of any
Stafford
quarterback and wide receiver ever.
If you were to ask Matthew Stafford himself what his favorite memory of his career was, if he retired after the season, he would say Sunday's game. That's the point I'm making here. Matthew Stafford's going to remember this moment, or possibly whatever he does next week, or possibly the Super Bowl.
If he said that, given the polar opposite fan bases, that'd be kind of sad. Because the LA ain't ride or die for him. Detroit would die for that man. LA would not.
But what about the fact that he made the most historic and most landmark moment of his career? You talk about lack of perspective. I think you're having a lack of perspective about how important this was.
Forget anything that him and Calvin Johnson. Forget any play him and Calvin Johnson ever made. Never happened.
But they never won a playoff game together.
Oh my God.
He threw the record amount of yards for a receiver in a single season to Calvin Johnson. You don't think being the quarterback for that accomplishment isn't the greatest
and LeBron
moment
James,
of his career?
hey, Evan, and LeBron James wasn't a good player until he won his first NBA title 10 years into his career.
And that's not
he sucked the entire first
That's
stint
not
with
the same
Cleveland. He was
comparison at all.
poverty.
And that's not his fault that he didn't win a playoff game when he never in his entire Lions career did not have a running game.
Yes, I know that.
Are we going to talk
Which
about
makes it even more
LaShore?
insane why we're saying he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer for what he did in Detroit.
LaShore? Are we going to talk about Javid Best? Are we going to talk about
which makes his tenure in Detroit even more amazing because he had no run game, no defense, and no offensive line.
So why is he not a first ballot Hall of Famer, Michael?
I think he needs. I'll probably change my mind if he at least gets to a Super Bowl. Maybe. No, probably. Yeah. I will change my mind if he gets to a Super Bowl. If you would have asked me before this year, if you would have asked me going into this year, we have gone
off the rails.
If you would have asked me before this year if Matthew Stafford
hold up.
Hall of Famer, I would have said no. After this playoff run, I'm going to change my mind. I'm sure.
We have to put some respect on Phil Rivers' name if we're talking about Matthew Stafford like this, because
Philip Rivers, legendary quarterback,
he should be
to win a ring.
Rivers should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, regardless of the ring, due to what he did. And I think Matthew Stafford falls into that same category of poverty franchises who hosted some of the best quarterbacks of all time and never really gave them what they needed to actually succeed around them. That's both failures on the Chargers and Lions part. And it shouldn't hold either of those two guys out of the first ballot conversation because of the level that they played at for so long with such bad teams.
I agree completely. I've never said anything against what you just said.
But you see, you're playing semantics now and saying, "Oh, well, I didn't exactly say that." But you bringing up an LA Rams moment, the first thing you think of when you think of Matthew Stafford tells me everything we need to know.
Talking about you said what to make of the Rams Buccaneers game.
But then we start talking about Stafford. We just mentioned the Lions and Stafford and how Stafford was a Hall of Famer. You're playing semantics to say, "Oh, well, I didn't say Matthew Stafford wasn't a Hall of Famer because of his Detroit numbers."
I said he's a Hall of Famer just on the line tenure alone. I said that.
When we're thinking about Stafford,
what more do you want from me?
Let's just go back to his rookie year when he won a game with a separated shoulder. The guy's got legendary toughness. You don't think of all of the moments he had in Detroit first. I mean, yeah, the record to Calvin Johnson. What about the Hail Mary to him it wasn't a Hail Mary, but the long bomb to him in like triple coverage against Dallas in 2011. Or when he and Megatron clinched the Lions' first playoff berth since the mid-90s. I mean, there's so many.
Hold up, one other moment that I want to bring up with those, Michael. Running down the field in 2 minutes with broken ribs to snap the ball in time to sneak into the end zone. But keep going.
I mean, you can keep going with the man laid his heart on the line for the city of Detroit. And if he had the talent, if he had all the talent around him, he would have made a deep playoff run. So
why are we defending
he went
Matthew Stafford Detroit like this was ever in question? Cam was asking about the Rams and the Buccaneers.
No. We started talking about Matthew Stafford's Hall of Fame status. You're trying to protect yourself from what you just said.
I'm not
You said it would take him 5 to 7 years with the Rams to make the Hall of Fame.
You're saying he needs to do all this stuff with the Rams to now validate that he's the first ballot when he was already a first ballot before he came to the Rams.
I didn't say he wasn't a first ballot now.
Yes, you did. You said he has to validate it.
I said if he continues,
he has to validate it.
15 top 10 quarterback is what I was saying.
No. You said
Sean, you did
all
say 5 to 7 years. You did say 5 to 7 years.
He said one, he needs a legendary moment in the playoffs to validate his stuff.
He already did. He already got that.
He already did it with Detroit. He didn't need to prove anything outside of his Detroit tenure because that was pure and utter hell.
Well, guess what? He got that moment.
All right. We're out of time. We got stuff to do today. We're going to have a lot more to talk about Friday. UFC 270 we'll save for that day. We got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. Oh my God. Evan, dance us away because this was terrible. Oh my God. What an ending. I thought we were going to lose our minds with talking about the OT rule, but no. It went to pure hell after Sean said Matthew Stafford needs validation still.
Never said that.
Make sure to follow us on social medias. They're all linked in the description on YouTube. Go check that out. Our link to the Substack is on there as well. Subscribe to the mailing list. It's free. No stream on Wednesday because Sean and I are heading down to Phoenix to cover NASCAR Next Gen testing at Phoenix Raceway. So we will be back on Friday to make up for whatever news comes out within the next couple of days and to preview the conference title games for Sean, Evan, and Michael. I am Cameron Richardson, and we will see y'all on Friday. Have a great rest of your week.